Okay, so our next lesson is changing slope-intercept form. We're going to start with just writing it in slope-intercept form, and then we're going to be changing it from one format back into slope-intercept form. So let's go back and remind ourselves slope-intercept form again is y equals mx plus b. Remember, your m is your slope. And your b is your y-intercept. So all we're doing right now is taking the information here and just throwing it into an equation. So we have a slope of 2, so y equals 2x, an intercept of -1. Slope of -3/5, an intercept of +4. Slope of -3, intercept of +2. Slope of -1, this is what we discussed in the last lesson. I don't need to put a -1. I can just put -x and then a +7. So I do not need that. Next one would be a slope of 1/4 x and no intercept. So I do not need to put +0. This one works just fine. And the last one is y equals -5/2 x, -3 or -3. From here, we're going to talk about standard form. Standard form is written as ax plus by equals c. So this is another format. However, we will be turning it back into slope-intercept form. So I want this to be transformed back into this. So we're going to work on these 6 examples to do that. So the first one, remember, we want y to be all alone, right? Y equals mx plus b. So if I want y to be all alone, I need to move stuff to the other side of the equation. So I could do my little fence like we do in solving equations. So if I want this to go away, that means I want it to equal 0. So in order for this to cancel out, I would have to subtract it from both sides. 2 minus 2 is 0, so I cancel it out. Drop down my y, drop down my equal sign. These can't be combined. They're not like terms. So since they're not like terms, all I do is just drop down what it says. In order for it to be in the slope-intercept form, I want to put my x term first. So my x term was -2x, and then I have a +3 left over. So now it is written in slope-intercept form. Let's go to number 2. Same thing. I need y to be by itself. So let's move the x term to the other side. So for 4x to be canceled out, it needs to be 0. So how do I get 4x to be 0? I subtract 4x from both sides. 4x minus 4x is 0. Cancel it. Drop down. So now I have 5y equals, you can't combine, not like terms. So we just drop down in the slope-intercept format. So remember, your x term comes first. So we have -4x, and we have a -30. Now, y is still not alone. I need y to be by itself. So in order to get rid of this 5, I would be dividing by 5. I have to divide by 5 all the way through. 5 divided by 5 leaves me with 1y left over, so I can cancel out the 5's. Here, since it's a just normal fraction, and I want slope to be a fraction, I'm not going to do anything with this because I can't simplify it any further. So this now just becomes -4/5 x. Here I can simplify. -30 divided by 5 is -6. So now it is written in slope-intercept form. Let's go to number 3. I want, again, y to be alone. So move your x term to the other side first. So I want to subtract x from both sides. That way x minus x cancels out. Drop down what we didn't use. So I have a -3y equals, again we want x term to come first, so the x is -x +12. Y still is not alone, so to get rid of a -3y multiplication, the inverse would be to divide by -3. -3 divided by -3 cancels out. Here I'm left with a -x over a -3. A negative and a negative would make this a positive. Remember, there is a hidden 1, so this is technically 1/3 x. 12 divided by -3 leaves me with -4. So back into slope-intercept form, it would be y equals 1/3 x minus 4. Let's go to number 4. I need to get rid of this x on the side, so y is alone. So I will subtract so that this will equal 0 and cancel out. Drop down. I have a -y equals -x minus 8. This is not alone. There's a negative, so technically there's a -1 here. So I would have to divide by a -1 all the way through. -1 divided by -1 leaves me with y equaling, again, what's -1 divided by a -1? That would give me a positive x, and -8 divided by -1 gives me a positive 8. So my solution is y equals x plus 8. Number 5. Highlighting the y, because that's what I want to keep. Let's get rid of the 4x by subtracting it to both sides. 4x minus 4x cancels out because it equals 0. I'm left with -y. I want my variable term first, so -4x plus 0. Do I really need this? Not so much, so we'll get rid of it in the next step. Negative means this is a -1, so let's divide by a -1. Y equals, negative and a negative makes this a positive 4x. Don't need the 0 because it's just got no value. Last one. Let's subtract 3x from both sides. 3x minus 3x equals 0, so we can cancel it. Drop down the -2y. Drop down your -3x and your positive 14. We need to get rid of the -2y, so we will divide everything by -2. Cancels because it equals 1y. A negative and a negative makes it a positive 3/2 x. Remember, we want to leave slope improper if it's already that way. We can simplify it and make it a smaller improper, but we want to leave it improper. And then 14 divided by -2 leaves me with a -7. So slope-intercept form is y equals 3/2 x minus 7. So now you will complete the backside, which is a puzzle. So for 1 through 9, all you are doing is identifying the slope in each one of these. So for you to identify the slope, you must rewrite all equations into slope-intercept form. You cannot just say that this is 3 because it's with the x. You need to readjust and put it in slope-intercept form, because just like on this side here, if we just said this was 2, once it was in slope-intercept form, it became -2. So you have to rewrite it to figure out your slope. Same thing goes for identifying your y-intercept. You need to rewrite it. So I should see work done on a separate sheet of paper, stapled to this, and then you can fill in the puzzle at the top. So I don't care about the puzzle as much as I care that you are showing your work for 1 through 16 on a separate sheet of paper. All right, good luck.